Yeah, so my parents are originally from Mexico. They traveled to the US in the late 1970s, early 1980s. So I'm originally from Georgia. As a kid, we always had a rule that you had to speak Spanish in the household. It was a way to kind of preserve the language just because we had seen that a lot of my cousins or relatives, the more you passed on, the less they tended to speak English. We also had the opportunity to travel a lot back to Mexico. So during the summer and during the winters, we would spend about 2 or 3 months out of the year back there. And it was really nice. It was kind of my first exposure to living in a country outside of the US with people who spoke a different language, used a different currency, had a distinct political system. And it was definitely something that I think got me interested in working in a job that you could do this for a lifetime kind of deal. So for undergrad, I went to the University of Georgia and I studied international affairs, Latin American studies, and Spanish. And my junior year, I studied abroad a year in Chile and Argentina, so 6 months in each country. I went down there to do research on the dictatorships of the 1970s. And while I was in Chile, I got a call from the embassy where they were inviting a couple of us there to speak with their political officers. And this was actually the first time I was exposed to the State Department. So in conversations with one of the officers there, found out about his job. You know, he worked with the government, reached out to civil society, got to speak with academics, covered similar things that I was interested in, but as part of his job. And that put the State Department on my radar in terms of something that I wanted to pursue maybe after graduating. So I am a political officer at the US Embassy here in Canberra. As part of my portfolio, I cover the Middle East, Latin America, trafficking in persons, human rights, refugees, and counterterrorism. So I work very closely with the DEA and FBI because they also cover these components. But I also work with Australian agencies like Department of Home Affairs, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Attorney General's Office, and the Federal Police. Most of my time is spent on issues like Venezuela, foreign terrorist fighters, and the refugee deal that we have with Australia. So I work a lot with them in terms of just kind of making sure that we're coordinating on those issues and trying to resolve them to the best we can. I think, so for my first tour, I went to Guadalajara in Mexico, which is something that I'd always wanted to do. Even though we went back to Mexico as a child, I'd always wanted to go back by myself and kind of live in the country and see what it was like. So on Flag Day, which is kind of like graduation for the Foreign Service, they'll project a flag and there'll be a bit of a pause and then they'll say your name. So when I got Mexico, I was really excited. I appreciated the food. The people were really friendly. Had the opportunity to travel a lot, different cities across the country. I was a consular officer, so I did visa interviews, and I ended up interviewing like 60,000 people. So that was about 150, 180 a day. And it was a great way to kind of meet people from all walks of life, farmers, businessmen. I met Manny Pacquiao, who's like a famous fighter. It was 2 fun years that I really enjoyed, and it was kind of a nice way to start a job in the Foreign Service. Yeah, that's a good one. So I think, my exposure to the Foreign Service came while I was studying abroad, so it's definitely something that I recommend to people if they're interested in something like this. Applying for things like the Benjamin Gilman Scholarship, which can help finance an exchange, participating in the Fulbright program, so if you're interested in teaching English or doing research abroad. The Boren Scholarship, we have a high need of people who understand critical languages, so that's a great way to kind of spend some time abroad and learn a different language. But also things like the Pickering or the Wrangell Fellowship, they'll provide you with financing for school, especially at the graduate level. You'll get an internship on the Hill, so you'll get to work with a congressman or congresswoman. You'll get to do an internship abroad. I did mine in Geneva, in Switzerland. And then they'll provide you with mentors, which I think is really important because it'll help you navigate to the Foreign Service exam, selecting your post, kind of figuring out which career track you want to do, if you want to go the political route, an economic route, public affairs, or consular. So I think just taking advantage of those opportunities early on, it'll broaden your network and just kind of expose you to people who already work in that industry. And I think that's the best way to find out if you like it or not. Yeah. So I actually look forward to Hispanic Heritage Month whenever it comes around. It's always nice to get a different take on it, depending on where you are in the world. So, experiencing it in Mexico is one thing, experiencing it in Australia is a different one. But I appreciate how the department kind of brings profiles from different people across the globe, both in DC and embassies abroad. I'm just always impressed by the work that the people are doing and the different portfolios that they're handling. And it's obviously important work, and I appreciate the diverse background that they bring. It's people that come, from the Caribbean, Central America, South America. They may speak Spanish, but we all speak it differently. Some of them are first generation, others are second or third. But I think the breadth of those experiences is value added and ultimately makes the department stronger. I hope to see more people like us in it. So maybe over the next couple of years, we can increase those numbers. But it's always nice to see kind of their accomplishments listed and then see what your colleagues are doing in other parts of the world.